Hello and welcome to our panel von der Idee zum Spiel, wie arbeiten Autoren und Verlage gestern und heute? Or for the English-speaking audience, from the idea to the game. How did authors and publishers work yesterday and how are they working today? The SPIEL Essen turned 40 this year, just to let you know if you didn't already notice. A good time to reflect upon the past and talk about board game development back then and now, from the point of view of developers and as well as publishers, of course. I don't want to spoil too much because I'm no expert. I'm just your host, Daniel Storbesant, and board game enthusiast, of course. But because many people know more about this topic than I do, I brought some wonderful guests with me that'll discuss my inquisitive questions for your entertainment. Let's introduce them from your left to your right. The first one is a man you probably already know from all the games he developed. If you don't know him by now, he's been a full-time board game designer for nearly 10 years now. He developed more than 20 games and is probably most known for his cooperative titles Pandemic, Pandemic Legacy, and Forbidden Island. And all of those sold pretty well, by the way. Welcome, Matt Leacock. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Beside him, my mouth is getting dry, okay?
That's a fanboy moment.
Beside him sits Sandra Doctorman, working at Cosmos. She has edited a large number of games since 2001, so more than 20 years by now, which is quite some time, and co-developed lots of exit games and adventure puzzles there. Together with her team, she expanded the range of children's, licensed, mystery, card, adventure, and exit games. So, good job. Thank you very much for that. And welcome in this panel.
Thank you.
And now I have to let you know that we've also got nobility on this panel. Royalty even, because the queen of the castle herself from White Castle Agency sits right beside me. Together with her team, she supports newcomers as well as established authors, fine-tune their prototypes and releasing their games. Lots of games, in fact, because last time I counted or searched for it online, around 200 games were published with the help of White Castle Agency. Welcome, Anita Landgraf. And last, but not least, Michael Palm. He's been running 2 game and comic stores named Seetroll, in English Seatroll, since 1993. That's 3 years before I was even born.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Just to let you know that he's an experienced...
That I'm older than you. Yes, you're right.
An experienced comic and game store runner. Yeah? Together with his good friend, Lukas Zach, which he made a photograph with just some moments ago on stage, he's been developing board games for 20 years now. And his most recent success, Dorfromantik, don't know if you heard about that, won the Spiel des Jahres 2023 award. So congratulations and welcome, Michael Palm.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now that we know all of our 4 panelists and me, we can start, without further ado, with the basics for a moment. How does one develop a game? Because, Michael, Matt, I suppose at some point you get a genius spark, like an idea. I don't know when or where, maybe while you take a walk or while you shower or something.
Yes.
But you get this spark of genius, and then what? What happens then?
Yeah. Very often it dies.
That's kind of sad, really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the sparks you can I don't know, like you're building a fire, right? You blow on them and you try to get them to ignite, kindling, and grow into something bigger. But other times it just fizzles and it goes nowhere. But I think the key thing for me is to try to test things very, very early on to see if they have life. You don't want to think there's a spark and throw lots of wood on the fire and then discover that there's no life there after 3 months or 6 months or a year of development.
But if I may ask, how many of these ideas do fizzle? Like if you would need to say like percentages?
It's hard to say. I mean, so many of them die very, very young. I only want to really run with something if I feel like I can get a scent, like a smell, like I can feel like there's something there, and I try to chase that. And if I can get that, I run with it. So I don't know, maybe half.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's about half of the prototypes will then come out, will be produced. Years ago, we worked on a prototype and tried to finalize it before we tested it really hard.
Yeah.
And now we are testing very early, so that we are just know if these mechanisms are good or not, if it's fun or not. And so we are testing more and a little bit faster than years ago.
And it's pretty fascinating to see those prototypes, right? Because when you look at the finished game, you think, oh, that looks fabulous.
Yeah.
And then you go back and reflect on the prototype where you can't even like make out the details on the cards or stuff like that.
Well, in the first lockdown, I draw the prototype of the first Dorfromantik. And you don't want to see it because I can't draw. But we tested 40 games with it, and my sons, they are 7 and 10 now, they were 5 and 8. After 5 games, they told me, Papa, please, could we play some other games? Because it, white things with my scribble on it, and yes, that's a sheep. No, it's a sheep. It's not a wolf, it's a sheep, and so on. And of course, the atmosphere with the final game is very big and very better than the prototype.
So you test your prototypes with your children?
Yes.
Make
first.
them play your games?
Well, it was the lockdown.
Okay,
I couldn't met some other, so they had to test it.
But what's your testing audience like?
Oh, well, I start with myself, and then often my kids or my wife, Donna, is very kind enough to try. Close friends. But that's when you don't know what the prototypes really are.
Yes.
They're like napkins and circles and lines, and they're very crude. And then gradually invite other people until finally I'm mailing copies to people I don't know and then asking them to play.
It's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking about other people, because we've got, of course, other people on this panel, and the important question is, when do you come into this process of developing a board game? At which point do developers reach out to you and say, hey, my prototype looks good enough to present it to you? What's that like, maybe, Sandra?
Yeah, that depends on the game. There are games where we see something and then we say, oh yeah, we have to do it, and we do it. And other games where we have to test and we are not sure where to put it in our portfolio. We have to look where we can place it. That's important. And sometimes we think about stuff ourselves and then tell someone about it and develop ideas together. That's really different.
And I suppose it's the same with you?
Maybe we kick in a bit earlier.
Okay.
Because we host a weekly meetup of game designers in Vienna, where we are based, and which is a bit of I'd say a safe space. So there's an opportunity for designers to not burn their family and friends with very early
We've all done that.
And so they can come there and they can bring on the table something that just popped out of their head in the morning. And I mean, sometimes the feedback on such games is very direct, but you get that from an interesting perspective because it's a group of game designers, and me as the agent or one of my team as from the agency, we also have like looking at it from which publisher could be interested and which way could the game go, so it really hits the publisher's interest or the target group's interest.
And then you walk the path of developing the game hand in hand with the developers, right? Mm-hmm. So how does the fine-tune process look like? How long does it take, maybe? How often do you like scratch some things and put some other mechanics in their place?
That really depends on the game and also on the game designers. So as you mentioned, we work a lot also with newcomers, mm-hmm. and I also see the agency as kind of a sandbox and a playground to develop your skills as a game designer. So maybe sometimes it takes very long working on a game and then finalizing it, even though maybe it will never be published, but it's a good practice to do that and to refine it and to learn how to take feedback and how to respond to that feedback and to interpret the feedback, because very often when you test something and there's a critique on the game, it's good to take a step back maybe and think, okay, they said what came out of their head, but maybe take a step back and think, is there something behind that actually they didn't like? And I think that's sometimes it's more obvious what the game lacks, and sometimes it takes maybe more iterations to go through it. So it really is a broad range. Sometimes I just had a meeting with a brilliant game designer, and he's like, yeah, he was working on an idea for 6 years, and there was just something missing, and he couldn't get his thing, couldn't get to the point. And then he met up with somebody else, with another colleague, and they just figured it out in a week.
Great.
Yeah. So you need to get in lots of different opinions, as many as you can. What's the most valuable feedback to one of your games you can remember? Does anything come to your head?
Well, I think one was about process. I was watching people play a prototype of Pandemic, and I was correcting them whenever they made a mistake. Because at the early versions of the game, there were 2 discard piles, and you had to discard here or there. It was very confusing. People didn't understand this. But when I was there, it was fine, because I could tell them how to do the game. So the most valuable feedback I got was to sit in the corner and shut up and just watch people play. And by doing that, I recognized that I saw the problem, and because if I kept helping, I would never see the problem.
Of course, yeah.
And then I was able to actually add an entire new deck of cards to the game, and I don't think I would have done that if I hadn't quieted down and just observed.
But you do observe them playing, then, right?
Yeah. Now I just I actually watch a lot of video of people playing the game.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I mail them out, and I'm not in the room then, and so they don't react to. I'm not there to save them if they have a problem. I have to make sure the rules are tight, and then I transcribe when I'm watching.
And then in the evening you turn on your TV and you watch lots of people. Lots of people play your games on YouTube.
But you can look much more objectively. You can go okay, this is just something I'm seeing. This is an idea, and this is a problem, and don't mix the ideas and the problems together.
I see.
Yeah, at the beginning it's important that when you're sending a prototype to a company, and of course you will get a no, then that they tell you some sentence. And that was very important for us at the beginning, that they are not just saying, no, thank you, it's nothing for us, but when they are writing you a letter, it's nothing for us because of this, and that, because it's too long or it's not special enough or something like that. These are the important opinions from companies.
That's an interesting point you make there, because if you're a new board game developer and you want to find a publisher, are there any tips or tricks you can give upcoming developers, like how they can impress the publishers better? What do you look out for when...
The first thing is look at the market. If there are some similar games on it, And then, of course, for example, to Amigo, you shouldn't send some board games with a lot of material because they are a card game company, normally, of course. And if you want something with wood, you should send it to a company who makes wooden pieces in the games, and not to companies who are always playing with plastic. For example, just these are. Of course, everybody, when you think about it, okay, it's clear, but we have some game designers in the shops, they are doing this not that way, so just think about it, where you will send your...
So which publisher makes sense for your game?
Oh, of course, go to Wild Castle, they will do it for you.
It's very useful for publishers.
I will get the €5 later.
It's a part of the process that White Castle does for, it's really good. And like you said, it developed. Now there are more game designers who know about that, who look at the market, who look at the publishers and present stuff that is suitable. But 20 years ago, there were more game designers who just showed everything to everybody, to every publisher, and that makes it, of course,
time wasting for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm. But how do you choose the games that you're fine-tuning then? How do you choose the game developers you're supporting? Are there any key points you look at first? Design of the game, rules of the game, name of the game?
No. Name of the game normally we add to the game in most of the cases, and the design as well. So for us, it's only the mechanism. The mechanism is important, and that there's something unique about it and something challenging or that makes us say, yes, we have to do that.
Okay.
Smaller companies, they have wishes. Now we are looking for a card game for children, or now we are looking for a board game with 6 and more players, for example. But bigger companies like Cosmos, for example, of course, they have such a lot of ranges with card games and board games and so on, and party games, and they are just looking for everything.
But still, it's not like we're doing everything.
Yeah.
We have to get a feeling what we can sell or not. Like murder mystery party, if you make a crime dinner, can we sell that or not? At the beginning, you don't know it always, but you can, something you can try and something you don't.
And it was a success, I think. in our shops, it's a success.
Yes, it was.
I also think it's very it differs from publisher to publisher a lot. So we have, because we work with so many different publishers and have a broad worldwide range, and also with indie publishers and corporations. I think it's interesting, and it's a fun part of the job that I like to look at a game and then visualize where do I see this product, and I think that's also a good thing to do for game designers in general. To try to visualize how would this game look like at this and that company? Would that fit in there, and would that be a good-looking thing that I would like to see on the shelf?
Yeah, I can imagine once you put out some or one or two very, very good games like you both did, it's easy for you to publish a game, right? But can you remember the first time you needed to publish a game? Was it hard for you, very hard for you to find a publisher?
I started back when I was in college. I tried to make a fantasy card game and just had it printed. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no publisher in mind. Then I brought a game to Spiel in 2000, so this is 23 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was self-publishing because I couldn't find a publisher. Yeah, the first game I actually got published was Pandemic. And I think I pitched that over 3 successive years, and it was only when it was done that people were really interested in, because that was when it was a good game. Before that, they're like, oh, I can't sell this theme, disease, who wants to play a game about that?
It's hard in Christmas business, it's hard to sell it.
Right.
It was hard to sell it.
Right. With that third year, people played the game, and they liked it so much, they were bringing publisher representatives to me and saying, you have to play this. And that was the quality of the game shone through. And you know, despite the theme, people were excited and that things were easier there then. But it was really all about like having a really good game was what finally opened the door for me.
Yeah, so you tried and tried and tried and didn't give up on that game, which is also very important.
No, I just kept making it better and better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's obvious things I did early on that now looking back, like, why did I think that was a good idea? But you don't know. You just, you know, keep at it and keep, you know, putting it in front of lots of new people and getting more feedback. Yeah.
It was very similar with Settlers of Catan there, because Klaus Teuber showed it to many companies, and they said no, and then Cosmos said, okay, we will do it, and this was also very successful.
I think it was, yeah.
I think that worked out.
I remember.
And all the companies who refused him are like, we should have said yes.
Fired. Yeah, my first game I tried to get into a company was a family game with a big ship, but with different. We want to reach different destinations, but we have only one ship. And I was 19, so it's a long time ago, and we didn't have any computer or something like that. I have to copy it with color copies in a copy shop for a lot of money as a student. And then I send it to Ravensburger, and it gets. Yeah, it goes up in the ladder of the company, but it wasn't produced. That was my first experience. And of course now at Dorfromantik it was another thing. From the first moment we smelled that could be a big thing, and the company said to us, yes, it will be a main project for next year and so on. And
And now you don't say you need my game, they say I need your game, right? When did they say, well, let's make the dual version of that?
I showed Klaus Ottmeyer a new prototype for 24, and we played it a lot. It will be a Dorfromantik for next year. And we played a lot, and then just before my train went to the south from Frankfurt to Constance, I showed him the dual version, and Lucas and me did, and he said, okay, we do first this and then that. He just said it in this after the first game of the dual version, and now. Today it's out there. Yeah.
I interrupted you. You wanted to say something?
Am I allowed to ask questions as well?
Of course.
Because I would be really interested. Do you still cherish that very first game? You created your very first prototype. Do you still have those?
The first prototype, yes. I told you the copies were very expensive, and of course I have it. Yes, I have it. It has a lot of wooden things, materials, and so on. But I have it. Yes.
I have the first sketch of the first pandemic board. It's on newsprint, and it's just Sharpie and lots of handwritten notes on the sides. Yeah, it's really ugly.
With some other cities on it?
No, it's circles with lines. So it's a
just
graph.
circles with lines?
Yeah, and then it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 in different colors, and there's like Queen, Jack, King, Ace. Because I used to study.
Okay, yes, of course, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the rules are in the margins.
There were always these numbers of cities? Or
I think it was 52 to start because it was a deck of cards.
52, yeah, poker cards. Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's so funny sometimes how such decisions are made unknowingly because you started with
you have
something.
To start somewhere, yeah.
And then it's like, I remember several times where maybe a publisher or an editor asks me, and why in the end did you choose to do this number of something? And I'm like, actually, as far as I remember, they just used the Hanabi cards.
Yeah. Could be.
But beside those prototypes of already published games, how many prototypes you did not publish yet are still sleeping in your drawers?
About 5. like 5.
Like 5 games
that.
that we can expect 2026?
Well, 5 that I haven't like decided that these have no future. Like some of those I'm just like, no, they're not good enough. And I'm tired of working on it. I have one called Ants that I started before pandemic, and I brought it out every 2 years for like, I don't know, 10 years. So I tried it like, I don't know. I tried to make it a good game 5 times, and after that I'm like I'm done.
Could you pitch Ants in 2 or 3 sentences, and we can see if Cosmos would take it?
No, I'm terrified if they say yes.
I'm not so into insects.
And that's enough to like refuse a board game? No, let's be serious, because it's hard for you board game developers to find a publisher. But how hard is it for like both of you to refuse all the games you need to refuse, but you can't help everyone, right? So like maybe first question, how many people, how many board game ideas do you need to refuse? And does it hurt?
So many, but I haven't counted them the last year, so I counted them, I think it was 2003, and there it was about 500. Yeah.
Magst du noch ein bisschen Gin?
Yeah.
This is water, by the way.
Yes, of course it is.
It looks like gin, but it's water.
Yeah, but there are many ideas that just don't make the cut, right?
Hundreds, really. Yeah.
Actually-
Every year, hundreds.
You
I
will
don't-
get 1 per day.
No more, never.
More? More than 1 per day?
Yeah. I counted in 2003, there was about 500.
So what are you
Something
doing
like-
here on the fair? You have to play, you have to
I'm
test.
not the only one. I have 1 hour here.
But I think it's not so bad to turn down a game. Actually, I think it's the reverse sometimes, and particularly with something that is like from a newcomer, maybe that's not so done so well. And I said before that sometimes we develop together like a game so that they have this experience of doing it, but also particularly when they are very far with the development of the game, and then it's like it's the game, it's what it is, and it's what they have. And then I prefer to say, yeah, we could do some balancing work here, and then maybe add some replayability value there, but it will remain an okay game. So maybe you just consider it your first thing and cherish it and keep it on the shelf. And with all the experience you just got from doing this, move on to something else. Or if you, like, very often it happens that they have a vision of what they want to be in the game, and it doesn't quite come out, doesn't translate to the players. And then it's like, okay, so you tried it this way, maybe go back to the blank slate and try it anew with the same vision, but in a different way, and that will bring you faster to where you want to get than tweaking here and tweaking there and just picking up the feedbacks from your test groups. So like, oh, sorry, I'm super bad with my microphone.
And that's the earring. That could be.
How can I do this? I will move it.
I'm glad it's
Thank you
okay.
very much. Yeah, I think you can go faster to a successful game when just maybe sometimes leaving it or also having it asleep for a while, and maybe you come up with something later.
Yeah. So you always, when you refuse games, like you give them helpful feedback as well.
Yeah, and I think there are. I mean, there's always this as an editor. I think also you're sometimes a bit scared of how will they respond. You only have half an hour, and then I would like to see the next game too, and maybe they have something good in the future. But from my experience, a lot of game designers really find it helpful that you just say clearly, no, that's not for us, or that's not unique enough, or whatever. I think we get a lot of rejections. So my daily work is giving, like rejecting a lot and being rejected a lot, and I think it always gets you somewhere into a better place than you've been before.
And that's a very good thing to work like this. It's still hard to tell someone who has developed one game, the first game, and developed, and then you have to say no, sorry, it's not working for us. And sometimes people say, but it's working now. Yeah. But that's not enough. to be published. There's so many ideas, and you cannot publish all of them. Yeah.
But lots of ideas get published, right? Because all the newcomers every year at Spiel, there are millions.
More and more, yes.
Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but year for year they go up.
30 years ago, we talked about 50 to 80 new
50 to 80 games.
50 to 80 new games. We could buy every new game in 1 year for our players.
So you went to Spiel and like tried every game that was new and then went home.
That's it.
Yeah.
But now for the jury, they played 360 in the last year. For the red and the grey prize, so the Kennerspiel and the Spiel des Jahres, and there are a lot more expert games and so on. You could finance it via Kickstarter or crowdfunding. Now you could get some illustrations from all over the world because you don't have to know the illustrator. Now you could distribute it. For yourself or not, or of course, and other distributions, it's getting more closer and closer. All these markets from different continents and so on. That's why a lot of games reach us now here.
Talking about the market, that's one more thing that interests me a lot, because you said earlier that you need to look at the market and see, is my game good enough?
Already there.
Is it already there?
Yeah.
Or is it like the best idea anyone ever had?
Yeah.
At what markets do you look? Do you look at the global market, at the German market? Does the American market differ from the German market, maybe?
Oh, the main view is the German market for us, of course, because of the shops too. But now we are looking to the American market too, when we are developing new games.
Yeah, I look at American and European markets, and it's usually I have a lot of relationships with different publishers, and oftentimes now I'm signing up for games that have been requested, and so they already have an idea of what those markets are.
Yeah.
I feel like games have come together a little bit closer. I feel like European games and American games were a little bit more different, say, 20 years ago, and now there's just a lot of cross-fertilization and so on. Doesn't feel quite as different to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, many things changed, and that's like the topic of this panel, right? From back then, 40 years ago, or 20 years, or 30, till now. Before we go on to that more, another question about time, because I'm curious about how time-consuming developing a board game really is, right? Because we talked about all the steps that get you from the idea to the game. We established that. But what was like the longest development process for you, and what was like the shortest one? What can new board game developers expect?
Well, for example, the Bang Dice game, it's a small dice game. We designed in 2 months, but that's very fast. Because the idea, the base idea was very perfect for this atmosphere from the Bang card game. For Dorfromantik, we needed 15 months. But for example, the Dwarf, the board game, the base game from the Dwarfs, it was 2.5 years. It depends. It depends, of course, how much gaming materials are inside and how complex is the game. But to design a game with light rules, with not many rules, is not easy. Not every time easier. Well, like Pandemic, it's a great game because everything is clear. Everything is clear and smoothie and so.
It feels polished, right?
Yeah, it feels polished.
Yeah, it takes time to sand things down and really smooth them out. Pandemic's a little hard because it's my first design, but that took about 3 years. Fastest, I think, was about 3 months for me. Mole Rats in Space, a kid's game, like 7 of that. Kind of like cooperative shoots and ladders, if you will. So pretty simple. All the way up to Daybreak or E-Mission, which is this year, which is 2 years of very intense development with a co-designer and other researchers working on that. and then even further the legacy games with Rob Daviau and now with Alan Moon. Usually about 2 years of development, and those are just long marathons. And after 3 pandemic legacies, we're like, okay, that's good, we're done. They're a long commitment, you know. Yeah. It's a couple of years of development, and then another year at the publisher at least. So it's, you know, by the time it comes out, a rule question comes up, and you're like, I don't remember. You know, it's been a long time.
And you need time. We are not working. I don't think if you are doing it, but we don't work 8 hours every 5 or 6 days a week. But you need for creativity. You need time just to relax and think about it, and the time to the next testing group and so on. That's why we are talking about months.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah, the iteration cycles can take a while. It might be a 2-week. We organize it in like little sprints. So we'll send out some copies, get video, watch that, and then we'll have time to like integrate changes based on the findings, and then that'll be a new version. And it'll be like 2 to 3 weeks in between those. And we'll have to do like maybe 12 to 16 of those before the game's solid.
Yeah. I see.
So it's time consuming just because of that process. Yeah.
But you gave it your all and it worked. So.
It worked out, yeah.
Yeah. And then you can like look at it like a proud father at a game. And then now that we know how board games like come to life, let's look at how they came to life back then and how they come to life now, because we also touched at the topic like the market is more like one, the European and the American games are more like one. But what are like other things in the board game scene that changed and forced you or others in your field to adapt to that? Are there any more things you can think of?
Forced? Like the first thing that comes to my mind are letters. We received a lot of letters when I started. Like lots and lots of letters.
And faxes?
Yeah, and faxes, yes. For example, I don't know, it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago that we removed the fax number from our contact details.
Does anyone ever use fax
Right
now?
No. But for like, and I think that's also hasn't happened in quite a long time, but there were a lot of those letters and also prototypes that were sent without email or phone number contacts. So we could really just...
Well, nice idea, but what now?
Write in sending letters.
We played Diplomacy. It's one of the greatest games for me. We played Diplomacy play by mail. It was called play by mail, but the mail was a postcard. And so one week we were discussing with the others who lived in Germany, and then once per week you wrote your moves on the board and so on. That was that time when we get faxes and letters.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I never sent a fax in my life.
Oh, the first time it's great.
Yeah. Maybe I should try that.
It makes. It's a bit like the old modem internet sound.
And
you're like, it's so exciting. Does it go through?
Yeah, it's warm. It smells great.
He doesn't know this great sound with the first. No, you don't know it? Okay.
Let's ask the audience for a moment. Who of you has already used a fax?
Look at that. Boomers.
And why?
But did that happen to you when you want to send a fax and then you accidentally use the phone number and then you hear someone picking up the phone?
Yeah, and when someone wants to call you and then it's a fax and you know, okay, it would be now 12 times before the other side knows it's a phone number, not a fax number and so on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Must have been painful back then.
Yeah.
For the ears.
For example, what changed is the possibilities with the gaming material. Changed a lot. I think it was too expensive to make miniatures 20 years ago, and now every game has great figures inside, for example, or to do games which you are always playing one time, so like the exit and escape games. This was a change, of course.
Yeah, games came a long way from like Mensch ärger dich nicht to
Yes.
Many game mechanisms that developed in the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. Many new, and they're so normal today. But
Yeah, for example, in Dark Room, they're like the Dunkel from Drei Magier, the first one.
I know what you mean.
Nyctophobia?
Dunkelmagier.
Nach
Nach der Magier. You're playing not a normal game, and then you are switching out the lights, and it's another game because now you are not seeing every piece of the gaming material on the table and so on. It was very inventive.
But not only elements like that, but worker placement or stuff.
Yeah.
It's about 20 years, and 40 years ago there was nothing like this, and it was, the games were not so complex and not so much storytelling.
Well, and a lot of
it's more an event. There are lots of games who feel like a great event.
Yeah, in the 80s you had games with the event, this turn you're doing nothing. Okay, I'm playing a game to do nothing. Well, then I could go to the cinema.
You could take $1,000 sometimes when you passed with it.
But still, there are always many and lots of cool ideas like coming up in the market, right? Because like exit games weren't a thing some years ago. Legacy games are a new thing. So, but do you feel like thinking of something fresh gets more difficult year by year?
I feel like it's hard all the time to come up with something fresh until till it's there, and then you think, oh, that's obvious. Why didn't someone do that before, right? So I think I have to think that there's more ideas out there just waiting to be discovered. And that's
it would be sad if that's not the case, because then we played everything there is to play.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
no.
But as a publisher, of course, the more years pass, you say, oh, that I have seen that before, or that's been on the market 10 years ago. Maybe you could do something like that, similar again, but
Yeah.
And one thing that comes to my mind when I think of 40 years back, 40 years now, is the design of board games, right? Because I know too many people that only look at like the box of the game and then say, I'll buy that. And they have it at home and then they think, oh, that's not for me.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
It's an old rule.
But the thing is, it works, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's actually a motivation for all publishers to come up with a nice artwork for the cover. And I think that's also something that's changed for the good, in Germany particularly. That there's more emphasis
In Austria too?
in Austria too. Austria included. Yeah. So I think like I felt like a while ago that with all the markets coming together and with French games winning a lot of prizes from the jury and from the Spieleautoren jury and getting on the shelves here, I think that did something to the maybe budgets for illustrations.
More illustrations.
Yeah.
The French market is influenced, of course, from the comics, the great comics in France and Belgium, and so they are living with these great pictures and worlds and so on. And these both, a good game with illustrations, for example, from illustrator from France or Belgium, this is a perfect match. And in Germany, some are still thinking a good mechanism is all you need in a good game, but it's not true.
Although there are great illustrators in Germany and Austria.
Yes, and Austria. You're right.
But it depends on the game as well, because there are games, if you want to buy something for your children to learn, then maybe you don't want it to look like, oh, that's fancy and great.
Yeah.
Maybe you want something that's okay. And looks like, oh, somebody can learn something. It's this. Even in Austria, you can, everywhere.
Yeah.
I would say that really great artwork now is necessary, but not sufficient. That, you know, in order to stand out and like compete, boy, one thing that's changed is the artwork has gotten a lot better. But I think that it will attract players for that first printing, but for the game to have staying power, the mechanisms and the way it evokes emotions really have to be strong. And so you might, you know, I don't want to say fool them, but you might draw them in with great artwork, and that's necessary, but it's not sufficient to have repeat plays and repeat buyers, and, you know, for the game to be an evergreen or something like that. It really needs to be a good quality game all the way through.
Yeah, I'd like to ask the audience one more time. Who of you buys games or is drawn in by, buys games because of the artwork? More than I thought. You can hold your hand up, yeah.
And who is watching a video? Who is watching a video first and then is buying the game? More.
And that's another important thing. Watching videos, influencers, talking about board games. 40 years ago, maybe your friend told you, that's a good game, and that's it. And now, all the YouTubers tell you, that's a great game, that's a great game. This game could be for you. That changed as well.
Maybe now it's hard to think about which influencer you are following. That could be because there are a lot of influencers. But here in the shops, for example, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, when you had such a great big game in the shelter, you have to talk a lot and show a lot and explain a lot. And now someone is coming in, getting a box for, I don't know, 100 euros or more. And should I tell you something about it? No, I watched some videos and so on, and I need this.
I know.
Okay, just go ahead. And that's a difference, of course.
Yeah. Are you working, are you handing games as well out to influencers a lot? Do you have your influencers that you trust?
Well, it's more on the publisher side usually to hand out the marketing.
Yeah. Our press colleagues have contact, of course, and then,
But it's of course part of the publishing process today, right?
It's a marketing tool.
So as part of the marketing, you need to think about.
Because it's so important nowadays, of course.
I think it's also, I mean, that you will know a lot about that. It's also become harder for the publishers, I think, to decide who to give away games to, because you can't give games away to everyone. And there's so many, and maybe you want to support a smaller upcoming channel there, but then the next one who you don't support gets angry because you don't give him anything. And I think I'm actually very glad that I don't have to think about that, because it's not mine. Yeah, because you never know if that's gonna give a game a bad spin if you don't hand it out to a certain person or so.
Of course, there are many people who say, "Oh, I'm an influencer, or I can write about it, maybe, or please send me games." For free.
That was true too in 2000, though. People are always happy that I'd love that game. I'll write all about it. Yeah.
Now that we talked about the board game scene that changed and what happened, let's talk about your past and your games. Are there any games you developed or helped support or fine-tuned that you're not happy with anymore, or that you're even ashamed of?
Well, of course, the first games are the first games.
Okay, so that's that.
That's that. Then our first big game was the Simpsons trading card game. That was great, and it was great success with Panini, first Dino Entertainment and then Panini. And then they wanted a new board game for Digimon. Well, we did it, but if I'm happy with the Digimon board game, it could be that I'm not. For example, sometimes you were young and you needed the money.
Yeah, true.
Yes, I'm older, but I need the money too.
I still need the money. Yeah.
So.
I think it's also we do some contract work sometimes for companies who are not in the game business at all, so like marketing tools, or because someone is interested in games and they want to have a game of their own. And there's one or two who are contract work.
Which are just nice.
Yeah.
They were nice, but not.
As long as they were happy
okay.
with it, it's good.
Okay, I won't ask which, but nice to know, yeah. Any anecdotes?
Yeah, for me, it's not something I feel ashamed, but some stuff you had to do because of a license, and I wouldn't have done if I could choose it. But there's nothing I have to be ashamed about.
Okay.
I'm glad.
I have a fantasy card game that I did. Like I referenced it earlier in college, and it's just terrible.
Show it to us.
There's only like 120 of them ever made. So it's
But you can sell it with the most terrible card game from Matt Leacock. That would be nice.
go seek it out. Yeah.
I'd
I will buy it. I will buy it too, and I will sell it too.
Now we're
And
at
that's
the
a
point
deal.
marketing again.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Should try that.
But although you say, okay, it's not the best game I made, you learned many valuable lessons.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
With that,
Yeah.
right?
I think you have to make a lot of bad games before you can make some good ones. You just have to learn how the process works.
That's encouraging.
Yeah. Well, it's like being a writer or a
Yeah.
poet or something like that. You know, you have to get some of that out, I think.
What would like the one tip be to give upcoming board game developers? Like, if I would be one, if I would have a great idea, like a spark of genius, like we talked about earlier, what would you tell me the one thing I should remember?
Beside the thing that you have to go to White Castle.
Beside that, yeah.
Okay. Well, be patient, because the companies need a lot of time when you're giving your prototype, for example. It doesn't get an answer. You not get an answer in after a month or two. Maybe it takes longer. And don't trust your friends always, because they had fun by testing your game, but they are not
honest.
Well, of course they are honest, but they had fun and so on. But when you are giving it to some stranger guys or to some strangers, they will give you the real opinion. I think. Yeah.
Thanks for your tip.
Yes, of course.
I'd say connect yourself to others. Maybe want to find the closest game designer group. Find others who know. Like go to events, check out what's the next convention. Meet people, talk to them, let them play your stuff, and suck in the critique, and don't stop at the good things they say. You want to get the bad things they say, and I think that's like, if you look at designers who started with that idea and they don't know where to go, and the ones who connected and listen to others and learn from their experience, I think they're around.
Yeah.
My one would probably be try to think about the target group you're aiming for, because you will probably not manage to do a game for everybody, and so it's good for a game designer also to think about how complex should it be, how difficult is it for gamers, is it for children, which age, and you can learn a lot if you think about that really seriously. Yeah.
I'd say as a designer, like when you're watching people play your games, try to have a lot of humility and empathy. Humility in that you may think you know the answer and that things are very obvious, but when you watch and see something not work, be humble enough to recognize that and know that great ideas can come from all sorts of places. And then I think empathy is important because you can kind of like put yourself in the shoes of the people playing and try to get a sense of what experience are they going through. Is this the type of experience I want to create? And react to that.
and ask them, have empathy, and then
Yeah.
ask them, oh, I see you like that, but why do you like it, or why don't you like it, or is there something about that could be different, or which makes you solve a riddle easier, or stuff like that.
Yeah.
One tip is just like, people may not have the right solution, but they generally know when something's wrong or what they're feeling. Like, you can't argue with how someone feels. No. They're just feeling that. So they're frustrated, you know, and it's up to you to like do something about that. Or if they're excited, then maybe that's good, you know, you should chase that.
And your first idea is not always the best idea, but it's always not the last idea. Yeah, the second and the third will get better and better. Yeah.
Now you know. So I want a board game from every one of you in the next 2 or 3 years. Before I open the panel for you, like for 1 or 2 audience questions, I'd love that. You can think about if you've got some questions, but I want to ask you first if you've got any like upcoming projects or exciting stuff in the future that you want to talk about, that you want to promote while on this panel. Anything?
Well, of course, I talked already about it. We will get new Dorfromantik games in the next months. And we have a special game with a cooperative family game at Pegasus we are developing now. It's a little bit more developed work because of it's a technique with inside, but that's it.
You can't tell me more?
Let me know.
I'm super happy to see that the Challenges Beach Cup made it here.
Yeah,
and
great.
we're looking forward to more things coming, but I'm also not supposed to tell more about that. And then, I'm excited about a cooperative game also that we have in the development with a publisher right now from one of the Challenges designers and Alexander Pfister. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I love working. I'm looking forward to having more time working on it again.
Sounds good.
Anything exciting coming up?
Of course. But we have so many projects that it wouldn't be fair to pick one.
Okay.
I think so. But it's always looking forward to this and that, and
Yeah, I'm excited to see Ticket to Ride Legacy here at the show.
Yeah, me too.
Very excited about that.
Yeah.
And, E-Mission, the game about stopping climate change, is out, and that was just a ton of work. I've never put so much work into a game before, and that's at the fair, so I'm excited about that. Next year, a very different game for me, a dexterity game, a competitive dexterity game that I started on 6 years ago.
It's not this card game. There is a card game.
You're flicking ants.
I will ask you every year here now.
That's a good idea. We should do it. Yeah.
Did you? No.
Called Spacebound.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm hoping that will be finally come out this summer.
We'll look out for that.
Yeah, great.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Anyone? Okay. Kevin, do you have the microphone? Can we do 1 or 2? I know we're like...
So you're pretty near to me. Hi. So Michael talked that in the beginning of some games you will just like sketch something and try with the kids and stuff like that. But these days you have a lot of tools that are easy to use at home, like 3D printing, AI-generated icons, stuff like that. How important do you think it would be that the first times you try with your friends, you actually already have something that actually looks like a game, rather than something very rough?
No, we are working with very rough prototypes normally. Sometimes we are doing some pictures on the cards, for example, from the internet, because you're just it could later on it could look like this or that, but we are working with rough prototypes first, and then it will get better and better.
For early stuff, it's extremely important to me that I'm willing to throw it away almost immediately, because I want to be able to change and iterate very rapidly. So I try to keep it pretty disposable for that first phase. Yeah.
But if you are testing with children, it should look a little
Yeah.
bit more like a game,
Yeah,
because other's they will say.
Or they are
most of
your
them
own
will say,
children. Then it's
Yeah, they have to.
you want to have one Coke? Okay, that's the game.
Chocolate.
But even then, with the kids game, first when you like do your first tries yourselves or with your circle of playtesters before you bring it to the kids, I also always recommend to keep it simple and keep the threshold low, or like don't keep yourself from changing because I put so much work in that.
Yeah, it gets too precious. You don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have time for one more question?
So it's probably last one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about the initial contact between a game developer and a publisher. So basically, of course, every new game has a new, hopefully unique idea. How does a game developer can protect this unique idea from probably you will send the idea to multiple publishers, and then probably a publisher which is probably like not very good could deny the idea and then just make something similar to your idea without you.
30 years ago, there was a book, and they told you that you have to send, for example, the rules to yourself by the post. Yeah? So you can get into a post office and say, okay, make the stamp here on it, so that everybody could see it was sent it on this date to yourself, for example.
Or a fax.
Or a fax, or some smoking signs or something. But now, of course, our market is, for me, our market is so close together. You have to trust the others. Sometimes, of course, it could happen, like in a family game by Ravensburger, they get a prototype, they said no, then they get another prototype 2 years later, and then the first author, the first author came and said, hey, it's nearly my idea. They took all the games from the market and put both names on it and put it on the market another time. That is hard for the company, of course. But they did it because they know when your name is, I don't know, when your name has a bad mood on the market, it's gone. So, well, I don't think so. Of course, we are saving the mails, the mail contact and so on. It was like that, and on this day, but that's it.
Yeah, I'd say something similar. It's so reputation-driven that if you were a publisher and done that, word would get out, and no one would want to do business with you to some extent. I mean, I think that's what's protecting people.
And a lot of information on the homepage from the SAZ, so it's the Game Designers Guild. You can get a lot of information how to do it.
Okay.
And you could be a member of the guild, of course.
Yeah.
I think we all love this business because it's so trustful. It really is, and it is really close with lots of real friends and people, and that's what makes games great, I think. And it really works like that. Of course, there are some black sheep sometimes.
Yes.
But it's really not in general.
Yeah.
And
an exception.
I'd also say that because it is such a, because most people know each other and the industry is so small and friendly and supportive, if there is something, if you feel like something wrong happened, talk to people.
Yeah.
Very often, it like the case you mentioned, very often a solution can be found, or you just talk to the designer of that other game, and maybe you just find out that it was like developed at the same time. Because usually, if you have that idea shown, I don't know, half a year ago to the publisher, and it's released like 6 months later, it's very unlikely that it was based on that game because they had it already in development. So I really recommend to just try to find the people and talk to them and find a solution.
Thanks for answering this question. I'm afraid, I'm so sorry, we're out of time, which is quite unfortunate because I think we could have talked a lot more about this topic. We could have
Would be great.
40 years maybe, yeah, answered some more questions. But this is it, I'm afraid. Thanks for taking part in this panel. Thanks for coming and listening to this panel, of course. And have a great day and have fun at the next panels.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.